Tonight, the room around you is finally quiet. The lights are dim. The noise of the day has softened into distant silence. And somewhere beyond your window, above the rooftops and sleeping streets, the stars continue their ancient journey across the night sky exactly as they always have. But tonight, you are tired. Not only in your body, though your body may ache for rest. Not only in your thoughts, though your mind may still be carrying unfinished conversations and lingering worries from the day behind you. No, tonight it is something deeper than that. A quieter kind of exhaustion. The kind that settles slowly over the soul after too many days spent carrying too much for too long. And perhaps beneath all the noise and pressure and endless movement of life, there is a question resting quietly inside you tonight. A simple question. Is any of this held by something greater than me? Hello and welcome to this sleep story from Divine Slumber Bible. Tonight, we journey together into one of the most mysterious and beautiful ancient texts ever preserved. The forgotten Book of Jubilees. A sacred story carried through centuries of desert caves, candlelit monasteries, and faithful hands that refused to let its wisdom disappear from the world. And tonight, in this peaceful moment, the story has found its way to you. Before we begin, I gently invite you to take just a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if these quiet nightly journeys truly bring peace to your heart. And if you feel comfortable, leave a comment sharing where in the world you were listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing this peaceful community gathering together beneath the same night sky. You can also type, "I am ready." And one more small thing. You may want to save this video now because there is a very good chance you will drift peacefully to sleep before we reach the end of tonight's journey. That way, you can continue tomorrow night exactly where you left off. And if someone you love has been carrying anxiety, stress, or heaviness lately, perhaps share this story with them too. Now, let your breathing slow. The ancient writers of the Book of Jubilees believed something extraordinary. They believed that history itself was not chaos, that time was not random, that every generation, every season, every human life moved within a sacred rhythm held gently in the hands of God. They believed the one who counted the stars also counted every human soul, including yours. So tonight, as your breathing softens and your body begins to rest, you do not need to solve every problem. You do not need to carry tomorrow yet. You do not need to hold the entire weight of your life alone for another hour. For this little while, simply rest here. The night is patient. The story is patient. And perhaps God has been patiently waiting for this quiet moment with you, too. So dim the lights a little more if you wish. Pull the blanket softly around you. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Let your jaw unclench. Let the thoughts drift more slowly now, like clouds moving gently across a moonlit sky. Tonight, we will walk through ancient gardens, beneath endless stars, beside floodwaters and sacred mountains, through forgotten pages that still whisper of covenant, mercy, memory, and rest. And as we journey through them together, may your anxious thoughts grow quieter, may your heart feel lighter, and may sleep come softly over you like gentle rain upon still water. In this very moment, open your heart and receive the peace that is coming. The night has settled gently around you now. Outside your window, the world is growing quieter with every passing moment. Cars become fewer, Voices disappear into distant rooms. Even the wind seems softer now, moving slowly through the darkness, as though the whole earth itself is beginning to rest. And here, in this quiet space, you are allowed to rest too. So make yourself comfortable now. Adjust your pillow gently beneath your head. Pull the blankets softly around your shoulders. If there is a light still glowing nearby, you may wish to dim it now, or let the room fall completely into darkness. Let this moment become separate from the rest of the day behind you. Nothing is required from you now. No task needs to be completed tonight. No burden needs to be solved before sleep arrives. For this little while, you may simply exist here, breathing slowly, resting quietly, held safely within the calm of this sacred night. Take a slow breath in and gently let it go. Another slow breath now. Feel the air filling your lungs softly and naturally, and then leaving again without effort. There is no need to force anything. The night itself is already teaching your body how to slow down. Feel your forehead relaxing now. Let the small muscles around your eyes soften. Let your jaw unclench gently. Allow the tension you've been carrying in your face all day to melt away little by little, like snow disappearing beneath warm sunlight. Your shoulders can rest now too. You do not need to carry the weight of tomorrow tonight. Let that weight slide down from your shoulders and disappear into the mattress beneath you. Let your arms grow heavy and warm. Let your hands become still. Breathe slowly now. Feel your chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm that has carried you through every day of your life from the very beginning until this moment. You do not have to command your heart to keep beating. You do not have to remind your lungs to breathe. Even now, while you rest, your body is being quietly sustained by mercies deeper than your understanding. God is watching over you. You are safe. Let your stomach soften now. Let every tightness loosen. Let your legs sink deeper into comfort. Feel the heaviness of rest moving slowly downward through your entire body, like gentle rain soaking into dry earth. The day is over, and you have done enough. Tonight we are opening an ancient book together, a book carried through deserts and hidden inside caves, a book copied by candlelight in quiet stone monasteries while generations rose and disappeared like waves upon the shore of history. And somehow, after thousands of years, its words have arrived here, into this quiet room, into this particular night of your life. There is something comforting about that. The ancient world was not as different from ours as we sometimes imagine. The people who preserved these stories knew fear, they knew uncertainty, they knew exhaustion. They knew what it felt like to lie awake at night wondering whether the world around them was slowly coming apart. And still, they believed that beyond all visible chaos, there remained a sacred order holding everything together. A rhythm, a count, a divine remembrance that could not be erased. The stars above them moved in their appointed paths. Morning continued to return after darkness. The seasons still unfolded in quiet obedience to the one who first spoke light into existence. And tonight, those same stars are still moving above you. The same heavens stretch quietly over your roof. The same God who watched over ancient deserts and sleeping shepherds and weary travelers still watches gently over this room tonight. You are not alone here. breathe slowly again. With every breath, allow your thoughts to drift a little farther away. You do not need to chase every thought tonight. You do not need to untangle every worry. Thoughts may rise and fall like waves in the distance, but you do not need to follow them out into the storm. Simply let them pass and return again to your breathing. Slowly in, slowly out. The writers of the Book of Jubilees believed that time itself was sacred, that every life unfolded inside a great divine story too vast and beautiful for human eyes to fully comprehend. They believed no generation was forgotten, no season escaped the attention of God, no soul disappeared unnoticed into the darkness. Perhaps tonight you need to hear that too. You have not been forgotten. Not in your weariness, not in your waiting, not in the silent battles you never fully explained to anyone else. The God who counts the stars has not lost count of you. And perhaps that is why the night can feel holy sometimes, because in the quiet, beneath all distraction and noise, we begin to remember that our lives are being held by hands greater than our own, hands that have carried generations before us, hands that continue holding the world together even now while you rest here breathing softly in the dark. So let your breathing become slower still. Let the bed hold your weight completely. Let your thoughts loosen their grip. You are safe here. God is watching over you. And as this ancient story slowly opens before us tonight, you do not need to strive to understand everything perfectly. You only need to listen gently, the way one listens to rain falling softly beyond the window, or wind moving through distant trees, or waves arriving quietly upon the shore long after midnight. The story has been patient for thousands of years, and tonight it is patient with you too. So rest now. Rest your body. Rest your thoughts. Rest your heart. The sacred night is deepening around you, and peace is already beginning to arrive. Far beyond the walls of this quiet room, beyond the cities glowing softly in the darkness, beyond the highways and apartment windows and sleeping neighborhoods, there are deserts that still remember ancient footsteps, places where the wind moves over stone exactly as it did thousands of years ago, places where silence gathers so deeply that even the smallest sound feels sacred. And somewhere among those deserts, hidden inside caves carved into pale cliffs above the Dead Sea, ancient jars once waited in darkness for nearly 2,000 years. Inside them rested forgotten books, books written by hands long turned to dust, books copied carefully by candlelight while empires rose and collapsed beyond monastery walls, books wrapped in linen and hidden away by people who believed the words inside them mattered enough to survive war and time and human forgetting. Tonight, we are opening one of those books together, the Book of Jubilees. Even the name itself feels ancient when spoken slowly, like something carried across centuries in whispers. Jubilees, a word rooted in sacred time, in cycles, in remembrance, in the belief that history itself moves according to rhythms established long before human kingdoms ever existed. And perhaps that is why this book feels strangely comforting when read in the quiet hours of night, because it speaks to the part of the human soul that longs to believe there is still order beneath the confusion of life, that the days are not merely slipping past without meaning, that someone greater than us still remembers the count. The people who preserved this book lived in difficult times, Their world was changing quickly around them. Foreign empires pressed against their traditions. Ancient practices were mocked or forbidden. Sacred rhythms that had once ordered everyday life were beginning to disappear beneath political pressure and cultural exhaustion. And still, they kept writing. They kept remembering. They kept telling the story. There is something deeply human about that. Across every century, there have always been people quietly trying to preserve what matters before it disappears completely. A grandmother teaching prayers to her grandchildren. A monk bending over fragile pages beside a flickering lamp. A father repeating old stories beside a fire while the night deepens outside the tent. A mother teaching sacred songs softly enough that frightened children can fall asleep hearing them. Someone always keeps the memory alive. And tonight, as you lie here resting quietly, breathing slowly beneath the soft weight of your blankets, you have become part of that long remembering too. Breathe slowly now. Feel the calm of the room around you. The story has traveled very far to reach this moment. The Book of Jubilees was never meant to be rushed. It moves like an old river through sacred history, slowly tracing the lives of Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Jacob. Generation after generation carried within what the ancient writers believed was a divine rhythm beneath all of time itself. Not chaos, not accident. A rhythm. A sacred count. The stars overhead moving in appointed paths, the seasons returning faithfully, the Sabbath arriving again and again like gentle waves upon the shore. The ancient writers believed the universe itself carried the fingerprints of order. And perhaps your own soul longs for that order tonight too. Because the modern world can feel so loud sometimes, so hurried, so fragmented. Days blur together, weeks vanish before we fully notice them passing. People move through crowded lives carrying invisible exhaustion beneath polite smiles and unfinished conversations. It becomes easy to forget ourselves, easy to lose track of what is sacred, easy to feel as though life is slipping through our hands faster than we can hold it. But the writers of Jubilees looked at the sky and believed something different. They believed the Creator had not abandoned the world to randomness. They believed time itself still belonged to God. Imagine them now for a moment. Ancient scribes sitting quietly beneath oil lamps while night gathers outside stone walls. The soft scratching of ink against parchment. The desert wind moving gently through narrow windows. Shelves lined with carefully preserved scrolls. The smell of cedar wood and old leather and smoke from distant fires drifting into the cool night air. Outside, the stars burn silently above the wilderness. The same stars shining above your roof tonight. And those scribes continue copying the sacred words slowly, carefully, faithfully, because they believe future generations may someday need these stories again. Perhaps they were thinking of someone exactly like you. Someone tired. Someone searching quietly for peace. Someone lying awake late at night wondering whether life is truly held together by anything stronger than fear and exhaustion and uncertainty. The ancient answer whispered through this book is gentle but persistent. Yes, you are held. The count continues. God has not forgotten the world, and He has not forgotten you. Feel your breathing slowing again now. The room is quiet. Your body is becoming heavier with rest. You do not need to carry every unanswered question tonight. The ancient people who preserved these stories also lived with unanswered questions. They did not understand why suffering existed, They did not know how history would unfold. They did not know whether their fragile communities would survive the violence surrounding them. But still, they believed that beneath all visible uncertainty there remained a deeper faithfulness sustaining everything. That belief became their shelter, and perhaps tonight it can become yours too. Imagine now the caves above the Dead Sea once more, silent for centuries, darkness resting gently over sealed jars hidden inside cool stone chambers, while kingdoms rise and fall beyond the horizon. Armies march, languages change, entire civilizations disappear into history. But the jars remain, waiting patiently in the silence, waiting for the appointed time. There is something beautiful about that patience. The Book of Jubilees did not fight to survive. It simply endured quietly, generation after generation carrying it forward like a small, steady flame protected carefully against the wind. And tonight, that flame burns softly here again. Not in a cave, not in a monastery, but in this peaceful room where you are resting now. You are connected tonight to people separated from you by thousands of years who still understood the same human ache for meaning, the same longing for peace, the same desire to believe that beyond all human confusion there remains a God who still governs the stars and watches gently over fragile human lives. The ancient writers believed every life belonged somewhere within the sacred count. Every generation, every season, every soul, including yours. You are not outside the story tonight. You are inside it. Your fears are seen. Your weariness is seen. Even the quiet burdens you rarely explain to anyone else are known fully by the one who separated light from darkness in the beginning. And perhaps that is why the night can feel holy sometimes. Because in the darkness, when the noise of the world finally fades, we begin to remember things that daylight makes easy to forget. That we are small, but not abandoned. Fragile, but not alone. Tired, but still carried. The ancient book resting quietly beside us tonight has survived wars and deserts and centuries of silence simply to whisper this truth once more into another human night. The sacred rhythm continues. The stars still move in their appointed paths. The story is not lost. And neither are you. So rest now beneath the quiet heavens. Let the ancient words settle gently over your thoughts like soft rain upon dry ground. The night is deep. The story is patient. And somewhere beyond the darkness above this sleeping world, the one who keeps the sacred count is still watching over you with perfect remembrance and unhurried love. In the beginning, before cities and kingdoms and roads and names, before sorrow and conflict and all the long history of human striving, there was only darkness resting over silent waters. No voices, no towers, no grief. Only stillness. And into that stillness, the voice of God entered like the first gentle breath of morning. Let there be light. The ancient writers of Jubilees linger over this moment carefully, almost reverently, because they believed creation was not merely the beginning of matter and stars and oceans. They believed creation revealed the deepest truth about reality itself. That the universe was not born from chaos alone. It was spoken into order. And tonight, perhaps your soul needs to hear that again. Because there are seasons in life when everything feels scattered. Thoughts become tangled. Days blur together. Fear and exhaustion drift quietly into the heart until it becomes difficult to remember what peace once felt like. But the ancient story begins not with confusion winning. It begins with God bringing order gently into the darkness. The first light spread slowly across the deep waters, soft gold touching endless silence. And according to the ancient imagination of Jubilees, the heavens themselves awaken alongside that first light. The angels are created in the earliest dawn of existence, arranged in ordered ranks, each with their place, each with their purpose, each moving within the harmony established by the Creator. Nothing is random, nothing is forgotten. Everything belongs somewhere within the sacred order. Imagine the beauty of that first morning now. No noise of machines, no crowded streets. Only light unfolding across newly formed waters while heaven itself watches in silence. The stars not yet hung in the sky, the mountains not yet risen. The earth still waiting beneath the hand of God like a blank canvas before the first brushstroke. Breathe slowly now. Let your thoughts drift gently into that ancient stillness. The second day arrives softly. The heavens stretch wide above the waters, vast skies unfolding in silence beyond human imagination. Endless blue prepared before a single bird has flown beneath it. The third day brings land rising slowly from beneath the waters, hills and valleys appearing beneath the morning light, rivers beginning their ancient paths toward seas not yet named, trees lifting their branches toward heaven for the very first time. And the ancient writers notice something beautiful here. The seeds. Every plant bearing within itself the ability to continue life forward into generations still unborn. A single tree carrying forests hidden quietly inside itself. A single seed holding tomorrow. Creation was never designed merely for one moment. It was designed to continue, to unfold, to endure. And perhaps you are more like those ancient seeds than you realize tonight. Perhaps there are parts of your story still quietly unfolding even now beneath the surface of exhaustion and uncertainty. Parts you cannot yet fully see. The fourth day arrives, and the heavens bloom with lights. The sun rises into its appointed place. The moon begins its silver journey through the darkness, and the stars appear one by one across the deep velvet sky. The ancient writers of Jubilees believed these lights carried sacred meaning far beyond beauty alone. They were timekeepers, markers of holy rhythms woven into creation itself, signs that time was not random, but measured carefully by the one who created it. The seasons would return. The Sabbaths would return. Morning after morning, year after year. The stars would continue their appointed paths, whether kings rose or fell beneath them. And there is something deeply comforting in that thought tonight, because human life can feel fragile sometimes, temporary, uncertain. Entire years disappear before we fully understand where they have gone. But above all human confusion, the stars continue moving faithfully through the heavens exactly as they did for Abraham, for Noah, for the ancient scribes who copied these stories beside flickering oil lamps while desert winds whispered beyond their walls. The same stars shine softly above you tonight, and the God who guides them has not lost sight of your life either. You are still within the count. The fifth day fills the seas and skies with life. Fish moving like silver shadows beneath clear waters. Birds rising into the endless heavens for the very first time. The world beginning to sing with movement and breath and living beauty. And then comes the sixth day. The animals emerge across forests and hills and valleys. Every living creature moving within the order prepared for it since the foundation of the world. And finally, humanity. The ancient writers pause here carefully because humanity is different from everything that came before. Not merely another creature among creatures, but a being shaped deliberately in the image of the Creator himself. Dust touched by divine breath, fragile, yet sacred, temporary, yet eternal. The world prepared carefully before humanity ever arrived. Light already shining, waters already flowing, trees already bearing fruit beneath the sky. The table was prepared before the guests entered the room. And perhaps there is comfort in that too, because sometimes life can feel as though you arrived unprepared into a world too heavy for you. But the ancient story whispers something gentler. You were anticipated. The heavens were already hung above you before your first breath. The earth was already sustaining life before your name was ever spoken aloud. And the God who formed the stars already knew yours. Breathe slowly again. The room around you is quiet now. The story is moving gently like water through your thoughts. And then comes the seventh day, the Sabbath. The ancient writers of Jubilees loved this part of the story deeply because they believed the seventh day revealed the true heart of creation itself. God rests, not because he is weary, not because divine strength has failed, but because creation is complete, whole, good. The Hebrew word carries the feeling of completion more than exhaustion, a deep stillness after something beautiful has been finished exactly as intended. And God blesses the seventh day, sanctifies it, sets it apart from all other days. The ancient writers even imagined the angels themselves keeping this sacred rhythm before humanity fully understood it. Heaven resting in holy peace while the stars moved silently overhead. Can you imagine that scene tonight? The universe itself breathing slowly, the heavens at peace, the Creator looking upon the finished world with joy rather than anxiety. No striving, no fear, no endless pressure to prove worth. Only completion, only rest, only the deep, quiet certainty that what had been made was good. Perhaps your soul longs for that kind of rest tonight. Not merely sleep for the body, but rest for the deeper places inside you that have carried too much tension for too long. The ancient story reminds us that rest was woven into creation from the beginning, before human ambition, before exhaustion, before fear. Rest came first as blessing, as gift, as sacred permission to stop striving and simply exist within the goodness of God. And even now, while you lie here beneath the quiet night sky, that invitation still remains open. You do not need to hold the universe together tonight. The one who separated light from darkness is still holding it perfectly well. The stars still move in their appointed paths. The sacred rhythm continues. And you, tired though you may be, are still safely held within it. So let your breathing soften once more. Let the ancient order of creation settle gently over your restless thoughts. The first light still shines. The heavens still declare their silent glory. And the God who called the world into being is still watching over you with patient and unhurried love. There is a garden at the beginning of the human story. Not a wilderness, not a city, a garden. A place planted carefully by the hands of God himself. A place of rivers and trees and soft living light. A place where the earth was still untouched by violence and fear and shame. A place where humanity walked beside the Creator without hiding. The ancient writers of Jubilees linger here gently, almost sorrowfully, because they believed Eden was more than a location long lost somewhere in the distant past. It was a memory carried quietly inside the human soul, the memory of what it once felt like to be fully known and still fully loved. Imagine the garden now in the stillness of your mind. Morning light resting softly upon leaves still wet with dew. Rivers flowing slowly beneath trees heavy with fruit. Birds moving through cool air untouched by fear. The earth itself breathing peacefully beneath open heavens. And there, beneath the shade of ancient trees, the first humans walking without shame. No hiding, no pretending, no fear of rejection, no need to perform worthiness. They simply existed in the presence of God exactly as they were. And it was enough. The ancient writers believed something was present in Eden that humanity has been longing for ever since. Not merely innocence, something deeper than innocence. Transparency. The freedom of being completely seen without needing to conceal anything. Most people spend their lives learning how to hide. We learn it slowly, carefully, sometimes without realizing we are learning it at all. We discover which emotions are acceptable to show and which must remain buried quietly beneath the surface. We build versions of ourselves for different rooms and different people. We manage appearances. We protect the vulnerable places inside us from disappointment or judgment or abandonment. And after enough years, many people no longer remember what it feels like to simply be known without fear. But Eden remembers. The garden still whispers of a world where human beings once stood in the presence of God with nothing hidden. The ancient writers even give the story a rhythm and timing that Genesis itself leaves mostly silent. Adam entering the garden after days of preparation. Eve entering later still. The world unfolding carefully according to sacred order. Everything moving gently, nothing rushed. The garden itself prepared before humanity fully stepped inside it. Because love prepares a place before inviting someone to rest there. And perhaps that is still true tonight too. Perhaps even now, in ways you cannot fully see, God continues preparing peace ahead of you long before you arrive there. Breathe slowly now. Feel the calm around you once more. The night is deepening gently. The story continues softly like water flowing through ancient stones. In the middle of the garden stood the tree, and nearby, the serpent. The ancient writers of Jubilees slow the story down carefully here because they understand something important about human sorrow. Most ruin does not begin dramatically. It begins quietly, subtly, with a small turning of attention, a whisper. A suggestion, a question planted softly inside the mind. Did God really say? The serpent in the ancient imagination becomes more than an animal. It becomes the presence of opposition itself, the ancient adversary, the voice that draws hearts away from trust and toward separation. And yet, even here, the story remains deeply human, because the temptation is not merely about fruit. It is about distance, the slow movement away from trust, the desire to hold life independently rather than receive it as a gift. And perhaps every human heart understands that movement more than we wish to admit. There are moments when fear convinces us we are alone, moments when anxiety whispers that we must secure ourselves by our own strength because no one else will truly care for us. Moments when exhaustion slowly pulls us away from the quiet rhythms that once kept us close to peace. The ancient writers believed all of that began in the garden, not simply disobedience, disconnection. And once the fruit is taken, something changes immediately. Not the trees, not the rivers, the humans themselves. For the first time, they hide. That is the tragedy the ancient writers return to again and again. Humanity hiding from the God who had once walked beside them openly in the cool of evening. Can you imagine the sadness of that moment? The garden still beautiful, the rivers still flowing peacefully, The evening wind still moving gently through the trees, and somewhere among the leaves, the first human beings crouching in fear, covering themselves, suddenly terrified of being seen. The ancient writers understood that shame entered the world before punishment ever did, and shame changes everything. Once shame enters the human heart, people begin building walls around themselves. They begin protecting wounds. They begin carrying loneliness, even while standing beside those who love them. And centuries later, people still carry the echo of Edens hiding inside them. Perhaps even you tonight. Perhaps there are parts of your heart that have grown tired from hiding pain too long. Parts longing quietly for rest. Parts wondering whether God still draws near to fragile people carrying fear and disappointment and unfinished stories. The ancient answer is gentle. Yes. Even after the hiding began, God still walked into the garden calling their names. Not with hatred, not with abandonment, but with grief and mercy woven together. Where are you? It is one of the saddest and most beautiful questions in all of Scripture. Not because God lacked knowledge, but because love still sought them even after they withdrew. And love still seeks people tonight too, even when they hide behind exhaustion, behind distractions, behind carefully constructed versions of themselves shown to the world. The voice still calls gently through the trees. Where are you? The ancient writers describe exile from Eden with sorrow, but never with hopelessness. The garden gates close. The human story moves outward into struggle and labor and grief. The ground becomes difficult. Relationships become wounded by misunderstanding and pain. But something remains. A road back. Not back into innocence, exactly. Something deeper. A return through covenant and remembrance and grace toward the presence once lost beneath the trees. And all through Jubilees, that longing continues quietly beneath every story. The Sabbath becomes a small return to Eden. Sacred time becomes a small return to Eden. Walking with God becomes a small return to Eden. The ancient writers believed heaven itself still remembered the garden even after humanity wandered far from it. And perhaps your own longing for peace tonight is part of that same memory. The soul remembering faintly what closeness once felt like. The soul longing to rest safely again in the presence of perfect love. Outside your window tonight, the world is still noisy and uncertain. Human hearts still hide from one another. Fear still moves through generations like wind through dry grass. And yet, the story insists something else remains true too. God still walks through gardens searching gently for his children. God still calls human names with tenderness rather than cruelty. God still desires closeness more than performance. And the road home, though long, has never fully disappeared. So breathe slowly now. Let your weary thoughts rest for a little while. You do not need to hide here tonight. The one who formed humanity from dust already knows every fragile part of your story. And still, you are loved. The rivers of Eden may feel far away now, hidden behind centuries and sorrow and loss. But somewhere deep beneath all human exhaustion, the memory of that garden still lives quietly inside the soul. The memory that we were created not for fear, but for communion. Not for shame, but for peace. And even now, beneath the silent stars moving faithfully above this sleeping world, God is still gently leading weary hearts back toward the garden they have been searching for all along. Among the long generations that followed the garden and the exile and the slow spreading of humanity across the earth, there appeared a man who seemed somehow quieter than the others. His name was Enoch. The ancient genealogies move steadily through the early centuries of the world like footsteps across a vast landscape, one name after another, fathers and sons, lives measured in years almost too large for the modern imagination to hold. And again, the pattern repeats with solemn rhythm. He lived, he fathered children, and then he died. But when the ancient text reaches Enoch, the rhythm changes. The words become softer somehow, stranger, more mysterious. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, for God took him. The ancient writers of Jubilees linger over this small sentence with deep wonder because they believed Enoch represented something precious that the world was already beginning to lose. Faithfulness, remembrance, the quiet ability to remain close to God while the rest of the world slowly drifted away. Imagine Enoch now beneath the ancient night sky, a solitary figure standing beneath constellations untouched by city lights. Cool wind moving gently across open hills, the stars stretching endlessly above him in silence older than nations. And unlike many around him, Enoch still listens carefully to the rhythm beneath creation. He watches the heavens. He studies the movement of the stars. He remembers the sacred count. The ancient writers believed Enoch understood something many others had forgotten, that creation itself was speaking constantly of divine order. Every season, every Sabbath, every rising and setting of the sun moving faithfully within the pattern established since the first morning of the world. And Enoch paid attention. There is something deeply peaceful about that kind of attention. The modern world teaches people to hurry past almost everything. Days become crowded with noise and distraction. Minds grow restless. Hearts become fragmented beneath endless demands. But Enoch walks slowly, quietly, attentively. And perhaps that is part of why he could still hear God when so many others no longer could. Breathe slowly now. Let the story settle gently around you. The ancient writers imagined Enoch as more than a righteous man. They imagined him as a keeper of memory, the first scribe, the first human being to write down the sacred knowledge entrusted to humanity before it could disappear beneath the erosion of time. There's something beautiful about that image tonight. Enoch seated beside lamplight while the world sleeps, ink flowing slowly across parchment, the scratching sound of careful writing in the silence. Outside, the stars continue their patient journey overhead while Enoch records what must not be forgotten. The sacred calendar, the movements of heaven, the memory of creation, the covenant between God and humanity. He writes because memory is fragile and because human beings forget so easily. The ancient writers understood forgetting not as a sudden act, but as a slow fading, like embers cooling quietly through the night when no one continues tending the fire. One generation prays less carefully. The next remembers less. The next grows distracted by other things entirely. And eventually, people wake up far from the sacred rhythms that once guided them without fully understanding how they wandered so far. But Enoch remembers. He keeps the record alive. And perhaps tonight that matters more than we realize, because every human heart longs for someone to remember what is sacred when the world grows noisy and confused. Someone to keep holding the thread when others let go. The ancient writers believed Enoch became that person, and then something even stranger happens. The text says, God took him. No grave is mentioned, No deathbed, no long farewell beneath fading light. Only the quiet mystery of a man who walked so closely with God that one day he simply passed beyond the ordinary boundaries of human life. The ancient imagination filled this mystery with wonder. Some believed Enoch was taken into the heavens themselves. Others imagined him brought back into the hidden garden once lost after Eden, a place where communion with God still remained untouched by corruption and sorrow. And there, according to the ancient imagination of Jubilees, Enoch continues his work even now, still writing, still remembering, still keeping the sacred record alive. Can you picture that tonight? A quiet garden somewhere beyond the noise of the world, rivers flowing softly beneath trees older than memory, golden light resting gently across leaves that never fade, and seated beneath those ancient branches, Enoch continues writing carefully while the ages pass below him like drifting clouds. Empires rise and collapse. Wars begin and end. Generations appear and disappear. And still the record is being kept. Still the sacred memory survives. There is something deeply comforting in that image, because human life can feel so temporary sometimes. Entire years vanish quickly. People we love grow older. Memories fade. Even joyful moments pass before we fully understand their beauty. And yet the ancient story whispers softly that nothing precious is truly lost before God. The record remains. You are remembered. Your life has not slipped unseen into darkness. The God who formed the stars still keeps count. There are people in every generation who become small reflections of Enoch without ever realizing it. Teachers passing wisdom carefully to children. Grandparents preserving old prayers. Quiet souls protecting kindness and beauty and truth in a world often too distracted to notice them. They keep memory alive. They refuse to let the sacred disappear. And perhaps someone once did that for you, too. Perhaps there was once a voice that spoke peace gently into your life when you needed it most. A person who carried light quietly enough that your weary heart could rest safely near them. The ancient writers would say that this, too, is holy work. The work of remembrance. The work Enoch began beneath the stars long ago. Breathe slowly again. The room around you is quiet now. Your thoughts are becoming softer at the edges. The story moves gently onward. The ancient writers also believed Enoch warned the world about what was coming. He saw humanity drifting further from sacred order. He saw violence growing, corruption spreading like shadows across the earth. He understood that forgetting God always eventually wounds human hearts. And still, he remained faithful. This may be the most beautiful part of Enoch's story. He remained faithful while surrounded by a world slowly losing itself. Not loud faithfulness, not angry faithfulness. Quiet faithfulness. The kind that keeps praying, keeps remembering, keeps walking gently with God beneath the stars while others rush toward noise and power and distraction. And perhaps tonight, exhausted though you may feel, there is something inside your own soul still longing for that kind of quiet faithfulness too. Not perfection, simply closeness. A slower walk beside God through the ordinary moments of life. The ancient writers believed this closeness mattered more than achievement or status or power. Enoch becomes great not because he conquers kingdoms, but because he stays near to God. He listens. He remembers. He walks faithfully through his days. And in the end, he is gathered gently into divine presence like a candle carried carefully out of the darkness before the storm arrives. Outside your window tonight, the modern world continues moving quickly. Screens glow, cities hum softly in the distance. People hurry through anxious lives beneath the same stars Enoch once studied in silence. But above all the noise, the heavens remain steady. The sacred rhythm continues. And perhaps somewhere beyond human sight, the ancient keeper of memory still writes patiently beside eternal rivers, while God continues counting every generation with unhurried love, including yours. So rest now. You do not need to fear being forgotten tonight. The one who remembered Enoch still remembers every weary soul resting beneath the night sky. The record is still being kept. The stars are still moving in their appointed paths, and you, here in this quiet moment, are safely held within the sacred count that has never once slipped from the hands of God. As the generations passed after Enoch, the world slowly began to change. Not all at once, not with a single terrible moment that shattered everything overnight. The ancient writers describe it more like a slow darkening of the sky before a storm, a gradual drifting away from the sacred order woven into creation since the first morning. People forgot. They forgot the rhythms of rest. They forgot the quiet reverence that once guided human hearts toward God. Violence grew slowly across the earth, like thorn vines spreading through an untended garden. Pride deepened. Human desires became restless and consuming. The world grew louder, harsher, more fractured with every generation. And still above them, the stars continued moving faithfully through their appointed paths. The heavens remained obedient, even while humanity wandered. The ancient writers of Jubilees tell mysterious stories here, stories of heavenly beings who crossed boundaries they were never meant to cross, watchers who descended into the human world and lost themselves within it, ancient guardians who abandoned their proper place and brought disorder wherever they went. The details feel strange and dreamlike now across the distance of centuries, but the deeper truth beneath the story still feels familiar. The world was losing its harmony. What had once been ordered toward peace was becoming tangled with corruption and sorrow. And perhaps every generation understands that feeling in its own way. The feeling that something beautiful has drifted off course, that human hearts were created for gentleness but so often become consumed by fear and conflict instead. The ancient writers imagined the earth itself grieving beneath the weight of human violence, and somewhere within that darkening world walked a man named Noah. Steady, quiet, faithful. While others forgot the sacred rhythm, Noah remembered. Imagine him now, beneath the ancient sky, the world around him growing louder with greed and ambition and endless striving, cities expanding, human pride rising like towers toward heaven. Yet Noah continues walking quietly with God through ordinary days. He still watches the seasons carefully. He still honors the sacred count. He still believes creation belongs to the Creator. There is something deeply peaceful about Noah in the ancient imagination, not because his life was easy, but because he remained rooted while the world around him drifted. The ancient writers believed Noah remembered what others no longer cared to remember, that life itself is sustained not by human power, but by divine mercy renewed day after day, like morning light returning after darkness. And because Noah remembered, God entrusted him with a task unlike any human being before him. Build the ark. Imagine the sound of those words settling into Noah's heart, the long silence afterward, the wind moving softly through dry grass, the distant cries of birds overhead, while the world continued its ordinary noise, completely unaware of what was coming. Build the ark. The ancient writers slow the story here because they understand how strange faithfulness can look to the world around it. Noah begins gathering wood beneath clear skies where no storm yet exists, day after day. Hammer against timber, the slow groaning sound of beams rising beneath the open heavens. People laugh. People mock. The world continues rushing toward distraction while one faithful man quietly prepares for a future only God can fully see. And perhaps that is what faith often feels like, continuing to trust quietly, even when others do not understand. Continuing to build peace inside your soul while the world grows anxious around you. Continuing to believe that God remains faithful even when the skies still appear calm. Breathe slowly now. Feel the rhythm of the story softening again. The ark rises slowly, year after year beneath the stars. Animals begin arriving in pairs through morning mist and fading twilight. Birds circling overhead, hooves pressing softly into damp earth. The whole creation somehow responding to a voice deeper than instinct alone. And Noah keeps building, keeps trusting, keeps remembering. Then finally, the rain begins. At first, perhaps only soft drops touching dry ground after years of waiting. The scent of rain rising from dust. Clouds gathering heavily across the sky. And then the heavens open fully. The ancient flood becomes more than weather in the imagination of Jubilees. It becomes the grief of creation itself pouring outward. Waters rising over violence and corruption and human pride. The old world dissolving beneath endless rain. Imagine the sound now. Rain against wood through the long, dark hours of night. Thunder rolling across black skies. Waves crashing against the ark while the world disappears beneath deep waters. Inside the ark, lantern light flickers softly against wooden walls. Animals breathing quietly in the darkness. Noah and his family listening to the storm beyond them while the vessel rises and falls upon the endless flood. And somewhere above the storm clouds, though unseen, the stars still continue moving faithfully in their appointed paths. The sacred order has not disappeared, even now, even in the flood. That may be one of the deepest comforts hidden inside this ancient story. The ancient writers never deny the reality of suffering. They knew history could become terrifying. They knew entire worlds could seem to collapse beneath human violence and grief. But they believed something deeper remained true beneath even the floodwaters. God had not abandoned creation. The ark itself becomes a symbol of that mercy. A shelter carried safely through chaos. And perhaps tonight, your own weary heart longs for an ark, too. A place of refuge while storms move through your life. A reminder that even when everything feels uncertain, you are still being carried by hands stronger than the waves. The rain continues for many days. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the waters begin to recede. Clouds thin, light returns softly through the darkness. The ark settles at last upon the mountains. Can you imagine that first quiet morning after the storm? No thunder, no crashing waves, only silence. The deep, exhausted silence that sometimes follows long suffering. Noah opens the ark carefully. Fresh air enters once more. Birds rise into the open sky. Animals step cautiously onto wet earth beneath newly washed heavens. And there above the retreating storm clouds appears the rainbow. Soft colors spreading across the sky like a promise written in light itself. The ancient writers loved this moment deeply because they believed the rainbow was more than beauty. It was covenant, a sign that mercy still remained woven into creation, a reminder that destruction would never have the final word. The rainbow stretches silently across heaven while water still drips from leaves and stones below. And God speaks gently once more. The covenant holds. The earth remains remembered. Humanity is not abandoned, even after all its wandering, even after all its failure. There was something profoundly comforting about that tonight, because perhaps you know what it feels like to survive your own storms, seasons where life felt uncertain and exhausting and overwhelming, times when you wondered whether peace would ever return again. And yet here you are tonight, still breathing, still held beneath the same faithful heavens. The ancient story whispers softly that the rainbow still belongs to you, too. Every time light breaks through darkness after rain, every quiet reminder that mercy continues. Every morning you awaken and discover life still carrying you forward. The covenant still holds. The God who guided Noah through the flood still watches over fragile human lives with patient love. And outside your window tonight, above rooftops and sleeping streets and tired hearts everywhere, the stars continue moving gently through their appointed paths, exactly as they have since the first morning of creation. The sacred rhythm remains. You are safe within it. You are remembered within it. And even after the storm, peace is still possible beneath the patient mercy of God. Long after the waters of the flood receded and new generations spread once more across the earth, there was born a man who spent many nights looking upward. His name was Abram. Before kings knew his name, before nations rose from his descendants, before covenants and altars and promises written into sacred memory, he was simply a young man standing beneath the stars, asking questions no idol around him could answer. The ancient writers of Jubilees imagine him often at night, far from the noise of the city, far from the carved statues and temple fires and crowded marketplaces where people bowed before gods made by human hands. Abram walks outside alone into the cool darkness where the desert wind moves softly across open fields. Above him stretches the vastness of heaven, untouched by smoke or torchlight. And there, beneath the endless stars, something awakens quietly inside him. Wonder. The world Abram inherited was full of gods, gods of storms and rivers and harvests and war. Every city had its altars, every family its rituals. Human beings searched desperately for meaning in the movements of the heavens above them. But Abram looks upward and senses something deeper. The stars move with order. The heavens move with rhythm. Night after night, season after season, the great lights continue faithfully along their appointed paths without confusion or struggle. And Abram asks the question that changes everything. If the stars themselves move according to order, then who established the order? Who governs the heavens? Who taught the stars their paths? The ancient writers loved this question because they believed true faith often begins not in certainty, but in wonder, a quiet refusal to accept answers too small for the beauty of the universe. And perhaps tonight, beneath your own exhaustion and unanswered questions, there is still some small part of your soul asking Abram's question too. Who holds all of this together? Who keeps the stars from falling? Who watches over fragile human lives moving briefly beneath such endless skies? Breathe slowly now. Imagine Abram beneath the ancient heavens once more, the desert air cool against his skin, the silence stretching gently around him. Countless stars burning above like scattered silver fire across black velvet skies. The ancient writers believed something sacred happened in those lonely nights before God ever formally called Abram by name. His heart was already turning toward truth, already searching, already listening. And perhaps God often begins speaking to human beings long before they realize they are being led. The ancient story tells us that Abram slowly began turning away from the idols of his father's house. Stone figures, wooden carvings, gods shaped by human hands and human fears. Because Abram sensed something simple yet profound. Anything made by human hands could not possibly be greater than the hands that made it. And so while others bowed before statues standing silently in candlelit temples, Abram lifted his eyes toward the heavens instead, toward the stars, toward mystery, toward the unseen Creator moving quietly behind all visible things. There is something deeply peaceful about Abram's searching spirit, not hurried, not proud, simply honest. The ancient writers describe him almost like a man listening carefully for music hidden beneath the noise of the world. And one night, beneath those endless stars, God finally speaks. Leave your country. Leave your father's house. Leave the familiar world you have always known, and go to the land I will show you. Imagine the silence after those words, the stars still burning overhead, the night wind moving softly through the darkness. Abram standing there with no map, no certainty about where the road would lead, only a voice calling him toward something unseen. Faith often begins there, not with complete understanding, but with trust, with the willingness to walk forward while only part of the path is visible. And perhaps you know that feeling too. Moments when life asks you to continue forward without having every answer first. Seasons where certainty disappears and all that remains is the quiet hope that God is still leading you somewhere, even through confusion and waiting. The ancient writers believed Abram obeyed not because he understood everything, but because something inside him already recognized the voice calling him. Like hearing a forgotten language, the soul somehow still remembers. So, Abram leaves. The city behind him fades into the distance. Dust rises beneath the feet of traveling animals. Tents are packed. Family members walk beneath wide-open skies toward lands still unknown. And through every step of the journey, the stars remain overhead, watching silently. The same heavens that guided Noah through the flood now guiding Abram into covenant. The ancient writers pause often over this word, covenant. Not merely an agreement, not a transaction, something far deeper, a bond. A promise held together not by human strength, but by divine faithfulness. One night, God leads Abram outside once more beneath the stars. Look upward now. Count them, if you are able. So shall your descendants be. Can you imagine Abram standing there in silence beneath the immeasurable heavens? An old man with no child yet promised generations beyond counting. The stars stretching endlessly above him while impossible hope settles quietly into his heart. The ancient writers believed the stars themselves became part of the covenant, a visible reminder scattered across every night sky that God's promises extend far beyond what human eyes can immediately see. And perhaps tonight, the stars still whisper the same truth, that your life is part of something larger than your present fears. that God continues weaving stories across generations even when human beings cannot yet understand the full pattern. Abram believes. Not perfectly, not without moments of doubt and wandering and fear, but he keeps returning to trust, keeps building altars beneath open skies, keeps listening for God in the silence. And that may be what makes Abraham so comforting to weary hearts across thousands of years. He is not fearless. He is faithful. There is a difference. Fear still visits him. Uncertainty still follows him through the wilderness. But beneath it all, he continues walking, continues trusting the voice that first called him beneath the stars. The ancient writers even imagined God restoring sacred language to Abram, teaching him again the ancient words of heaven almost forgotten after generations of human wandering, as though covenant itself was not only about promises, but about remembering who humanity was created to be from the very beginning. And perhaps your own soul longs for that remembering tonight too. To remember peace, to remember trust, to remember that beneath all exhaustion and anxiety, you are still deeply known by the one who first called light into existence. Outside your window tonight, the modern world continues rushing endlessly forward. Cities glow, screens flicker in dark rooms. Human beings search anxiously for meaning in 1,000 temporary things. Yet above all of it, the same stars Abram once studied still move quietly through the heavens. The sacred order remains. The covenant remains. And the God who called Abram beneath the night sky still calls gently to weary hearts even now. Walk with me. Trust me. You are not alone beneath the stars. So let your breathing soften again. Feel the weight of your body resting safely now. You do not need to see the entire journey tonight. Like Abram beneath the ancient heavens, you only need enough light for the next faithful step. And the one who guides the stars is more than able to guide you too. The night is deep. The heavens are watching quietly overhead. And somewhere beyond all visible things, the God of Abraham still remembers every promise spoken beneath the stars. The covenant did not end with Abraham beneath the stars. Like rivers flowing quietly through generations, the sacred promises continued moving forward through human lives that were often complicated and imperfect and deeply human. And among those lives, few feel more familiar to weary hearts than the story of Jacob. Because Jacob is not introduced to us as a fearless hero. He enters the world grasping, struggling, reaching. Even before his first breath, the ancient story says he wrestled beside his brother within the womb. Two lives already pulling in different directions before they had even seen the light of day. Jacob and Esau. Two brothers born beneath the same roof, yet carrying entirely different longings inside them. The ancient writers of Jubilees slow this story down carefully because they believed inheritance was never merely about land or wealth or family position. Something deeper was being passed forward. A sacred memory, the covenant of Abraham, the responsibility of carrying divine remembrance into future generations. And the ancient writers understood something many people eventually discover for themselves. Not everyone values sacred things equally. Esau grows into a man of the open fields, strong, restless, driven by appetite and immediacy. The smell of wild earth and hunting fires clings to him. He lives close to instinct, close to the present moment. Jacob is different, quieter, more inward. The kind of person who listens carefully while others rush past unnoticed truths. The ancient writers never make Jacob perfect. They understand his weaknesses well, his fears, his manipulations, his tendency to grasp for blessings rather than rest patiently inside them. And perhaps that honesty is part of what makes Jacob feel so real. Because many human beings spend part of their lives grasping for peace rather than trusting they are already held by God. Breathe slowly now. Imagine the brothers walking beneath evening skies while campfires flicker softly in the distance. The stars overhead remain faithful above both of them. The covenant still waits to continue through one of their lives. And then comes the famous moment. Esau returns exhausted from the fields, hungry, tired, focused only on immediate relief. Jacob prepares food quietly nearby while the smell of lentils and bread rises warmly into the evening air. And in one brief exchange, Esau trades away his birthright. The ancient writers linger over this scene because they believe it reveals something larger than impulsive hunger. Esau does not lose the inheritance accidentally. He treats it lightly, as though sacred things carry little weight compared to immediate desires. And perhaps every generation faces that same temptation in different forms, to trade what is eternal for what is immediate. To lose touch slowly with sacred rhythms because modern life feels louder and more urgent. To neglect stillness, neglect prayer, neglect rest, neglect the quiet voice of God beneath the noise of ordinary life. The ancient writers saw this drift everywhere around them, entire generations forgetting the sacred count because other things seemed more pressing in the moment. But Jacob, despite all his flaws, desired the inheritance deeply, not perfectly, not purely, but sincerely. He wanted the covenant. He wanted closeness with God. He wanted the blessing carried forward from Abraham beneath the stars. And desire matters deeply in the ancient imagination, because the soul eventually moves toward whatever it treasures most. The story grows more painful as Isaac becomes old and his eyesight fades. The household fills quietly with tension and unspoken fears. Rebecca remembers the mysterious words spoken before her sons were born. She understands something about the covenant others do not fully see. And so comes the deception, the disguise, the trembling voice before blind Isaac. Jacob wrapped in animal skins while candlelight flickers softly inside the tent. Outside, the night deepens beneath silent stars. The ancient writers never pretend this moment is clean or simple. The blessing arrives through fear and manipulation and family fracture. Human weakness stains nearly every part of the story. And yet somehow, the covenant continues moving forward anyway. There is something strangely comforting about that tonight, because many people secretly fear their flaws make them unusable to God. They imagine divine love belongs only to the perfectly faithful or morally flawless. But Jacob's story whispers otherwise. God works through trembling people, through imperfect hearts, through lives still learning trust slowly over time. Jacob receives the blessing and immediately loses peace. Esau's anger burns fiercely. Home no longer feels safe. The family fractures beneath grief and betrayal. And so Jacob leaves, alone now, traveling through wilderness beneath cold, open skies. There are seasons when spiritual inheritance does not feel glorious at all. It feels lonely. Jacob walks through one of those seasons now, dust beneath his feet, wind across empty hills. No certainty about what lies ahead, only the fading memory of blessing still echoing quietly inside him. And then one night, exhausted from travel, Jacob lies down beneath the stars with nothing but a stone beneath his head. The ancient writers love this moment deeply because it reveals something extraordinary. God comes near to Jacob not in triumph, but in weariness. Not in a temple, not in perfection, but in loneliness beneath the open night sky. Jacob sleeps, and he dreams. A ladder stretching between earth and heaven, angels ascending and descending through golden light, while eternity brushes gently against the ordinary wilderness around him. And above it all stands God himself. Can you imagine the stillness of that moment? The stars overhead, the desert air cool against sleeping skin, the silent movement of angels through heaven's open doorway, and God speaking promises once given to Abraham, now carried forward into another imperfect life. I am with you. I will keep you wherever you go. I will not leave you. Perhaps tonight you need to hear those words too. Not after you become perfect, not after every fear disappears. Now, here, in the middle of your unfinished journey. The ancient writers believed sacred inheritance was never simply about bloodlines or rituals alone. It was about learning to trust that God remains faithful even while human beings struggle and stumble their way forward through life. Jacob awakens trembling. Surely God was in this place, and I did not know it. There is such tenderness in those words, because many people spend years searching for God in dramatic places while missing his quiet presence beside them in ordinary nights of exhaustion and uncertainty. But heaven had already opened above Jacob long before he recognized it. And perhaps heaven has remained closer to you than you realize tonight too. The story of Jacob continues through long years of labor and wrestling and reconciliation. He becomes a father, a wanderer, a man slowly transformed through suffering and grace into someone gentler than the fearful young man who once fled into the wilderness. But the ancient writers never allow us to forget the central truth beneath his story. The covenant survived because someone chose to carry it forward. Someone valued the sacred inheritance enough to continue remembering. And now, thousands of years later, you are listening to that inheritance still unfolding through the quiet hours of another human night. The stars above Jacob still shine above you. The God who met weary travelers in the wilderness still watches gently over restless hearts tonight. And even now, beneath all human weakness and fear and wandering, the sacred promise continues moving faithfully forward through generations carried safely within the hands of God. So let your breathing soften once more. Rest now beneath the ancient heavens. You do not need to carry the entire future tonight. You only need to remember this gentle truth. The covenant still holds. The ladder between heaven and earth has never fully disappeared. And the God who watched over Jacob in lonely wilderness places is still watching over you with patient and unhurried love. Now the night has grown very still. The story has carried us through ancient gardens and flood waters and deserts beneath the stars, through caves where forgotten books waited patiently in darkness, through the lives of weary travelers and covenant keepers and those who continued trusting God even when the road ahead remained uncertain. And now, there is nothing left for you to do tonight except rest. So let your breathing become softer once more. Slowly in and slowly out. Feel the bed beneath you holding your weight completely now. Let your muscles loosen a little more with every passing breath. Let your thoughts drift farther into the distance like lantern lights fading gently along an ancient road after midnight. You are safe here. God is watching over you. The stars still move quietly in their appointed paths above this sleeping world. Nothing has escaped the notice of the one who placed them there. not the ancient generations, not the weary pilgrims wandering through deserts beneath the night sky, and not you, especially not you. The ancient writers of Jubilees believed every life belonged somewhere within the sacred count, every season, every generation, every human soul held carefully within the memory of God. Tonight, rest inside that remembrance. You do not need to prove your worth before sleeping. You do not need to solve tomorrow tonight. You do not need to carry every burden through the darkness by your own strength. The covenant still holds. The same God who watched over Noah through the storm still watches over you now. The same God who called Abraham beneath the stars still speaks peace into restless hearts. The same God who met Jacob in the wilderness still draws near to weary people lying awake in the quiet hours of the night. And perhaps even now, while your breathing slows and your thoughts soften, heaven is closer than you realize. The ladder between earth and heaven has never disappeared completely. The angels still move unseen through creation. The sacred rhythm continues quietly beneath all visible things. Breathe slowly again. The room is calm. The night is deep, and your soul may finally begin to rest. Imagine once more the ancient heavens above the desert, stars burning silently over sleeping hills, a cool wind moving gently through the darkness. Far away from crowded cities and anxious noise, there is only stillness and the quiet awareness that God remains present. The ancient people looked upward and believed the heavens themselves were a kind of testimony. The stars keep their appointed courses. The moon returns faithfully. Morning always rises after the longest night. And if God remains faithful to the heavens, then perhaps He will remain faithful to you too. Let that thought settle softly over your heart tonight. You are not forgotten. Not in your exhaustion, not in your waiting, not in the silent sadness you carry quietly behind polite words and ordinary routines. God has not lost count of you. The ancient scribes believed sacred history stretched across generations like a great river flowing steadily through time. Human lives rising and passing like leaves upon its surface, while God remained faithful beneath it all. And tonight, your life also belongs to that river. You are part of the story, part of the sacred count, part of the long remembrance carried carefully through centuries beneath the watchful mercy of heaven. So let your mind grow quieter now. Let every anxious thought loosen its grip. The future does not need to be fully understood tonight. The road ahead does not need to become perfectly visible before sleep arrives. Like Abraham beneath the stars, you only need enough light for the next step. And God has always been faithful to provide that light when morning comes. Rest now. The floodwaters have receded. The ark has settled safely upon the mountain. The rainbow still stretches silently across the heavens after every storm. The garden has not been forgotten. The covenant has not been broken. The sacred order of creation still moves quietly forward beneath all visible confusion. And somewhere beyond what human eyes can fully see, Enoch still keeps the record. The angels still move through heaven's great halls of light. The stars still sing silently across the darkness exactly as they did on the first morning of the world. Everything is still held together, including you. Feel your breathing becoming slower now, heavier, gentler, like waves arriving softly upon the shore beneath moonlight. The night no longer asks anything from you, no striving, no performance, no fear. Only rest, only peace. Only the quiet love of God surrounding you like warm light in the darkness. And perhaps tonight, before sleep finally carries you into dreams, your soul may remember something ancient and beautiful. That you were never meant to carry the world alone. That from the very beginning, human beings were created not for endless fear, but for communion. Not for chaos, but for sacred rhythm. Not for abandonment, but for love. The stars still move in their appointed paths. The covenant still holds. God still remembers your name. And while the whole world grows quiet around you tonight, heaven itself remains awake with mercy. So rest now beneath the patient skies. Rest beneath the ancient promises. Rest beneath the faithful gaze of the one who separated light from darkness and still watches tenderly over every weary soul. Sleep peacefully now. You are held. You are remembered. You are safe. And the peace of God is already settling gently over you, like soft rain falling through the stillness of the night. In Jesus' loving name, amen. And now, dear friend, the night is growing quiet once more. The ancient story has carried us gently through sacred gardens, beneath endless stars, across floodwaters and wilderness paths, and perhaps somewhere along the journey, your heart has become a little lighter. Perhaps your breathing has softened. Perhaps the weight of the day no longer feels quite so heavy. If so, hold gently on to that peace now. The world can wait until morning. Tonight, let your soul rest safely in the presence of God. And before sleep fully carries you away, I want to thank you for spending this peaceful night here with me. If this story brought comfort to your heart, you can share it with someone else who may need rest tonight too. Someone carrying anxiety, loneliness, or quiet exhaustion beneath the surface of their days. And if you would like, leave a comment sharing where you were listening from tonight, or which moment of the journey stayed most deeply with you. Maybe it was Abraham beneath the stars. Maybe Noah watching the rainbow appear after the storm. Or perhaps the quiet image of Enoch, still keeping the sacred memory alive. I always love hearing what God is speaking softly into your heart through these peaceful nights together. And if you have not already subscribed, you are warmly invited to return tomorrow night for another gentle journey into Scripture, history, and rest. Now, let us end this night together in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for watching over us through every season of life. Thank you for being the God who remembers every weary soul. Tonight, bring peace to every heart listening now. Calm anxious thoughts. Ease hidden fears. Let tired minds finally rest beneath your gentle care. Surround this room with quietness and safety. May your presence feel near in the darkness. May sleep come softly and deeply. And may every listener remember tonight that they are fully seen, fully known, and deeply loved by you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His peace settle over you like soft rain in the night. May your heart rest safely in Christ always. In Jesus' loving name, amen. Now the stars continue their silent journey overhead. The sacred count moves softly onward, and the God who guided every generation still watches tenderly over you tonight. So rest now. You are safe. You are held. And let us return once more to this peaceful story beneath the ancient stars, where the covenant still holds and where you are forever remembered in the mercy of God.